Every single day, you're hit with a ton of news, movies, and ads. But have you ever stopped to think, who's actually making the rules? Who's the referee blowing the whistle on what you get to see and hear? Well, in Nigeria, there's a whole group of these media referees making those calls. And today, we're going to pull back the curtain and see exactly who they are and how they use their power.
And that's really the core question, isn't it? The media shapes pretty much everything, from what we think about politics to what we buy. So yeah, some kind of oversight makes sense. But the real trick is, how do you protect people without totally shutting down free speech? That is the tightrope these regulators have to walk every single day.
All right, so here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll get into why the media even needs a referee. Then we're going to meet Nigeria's main media watchdogs. After that, we'll look at their rule book to see how they actually enforce the standards. Then, of course, we'll dive into the controversies and the big problems they're facing. And we'll wrap up by looking at what's next for media regulation. Okay, let's start with the big why. Why does a government need to get involved in regulating the media at all? Well, it really all boils down to finding that tricky balance between freedom on one side and public protection on the other.
You know, the main reason for all this isn't just about control, it's about influence. Broadcasting, in particular, is just incredibly powerful. Think about it. What people hear on the radio or see on TV can literally shape how they see the world. That massive influence is the #1 reason governments step in to provide some oversight.
So, what are they trying to do specifically? It's about a lot more than just stopping bad things from being said. It's about protecting people from genuinely harmful stuff, making sure the news you get is actually accurate, promoting local culture, and of course stopping content that could stir up violence. At the end of the day, it's all supposed to be about protecting the public.
Okay, so if that's the why, it's time to meet the who. Nigeria has a few key organizations handling this huge job, and each one has its own turf. Let's get to know the players.
First up, you've got the real heavy hitter, the NBC, the National Broadcasting Commission. You can think of them as the police of the airwaves. Every single radio and TV station in the country, from the massive national networks to your tiny local station, they all answer to the NBC. Now, for the world of print, we have the NPC, or the Nigerian Press Council. They're all about newspapers and magazines. Their job is to be the guardian of ethics and journalism, making sure what you read is fair and responsible. Then you have the NFVCB. You've probably seen that name right at the beginning of a Nigerian movie. They are the official censors for Nollywood, which is one of the biggest film industries on the entire planet. They have the massive job of watching every single film and deciding if it's okay for you to see.
And finally, there's ARCON, the Advertising Regulatory Council of Nigeria. Pretty much every ad you see or hear on TV, radio, in print, it had to get past them first. They're the gatekeepers making sure that the products and services being sold to you are presented truthfully.
So we know who these watchdogs are, but how do they actually do what they do? Let's open up their rulebook and see exactly what powers they have to enforce all these standards.
Let's stick with the NBC because they're a great example. Their power really comes down to 3 main things. First, they decide who even gets to be on the air by giving out licenses. Second, they're constantly monitoring what everyone is broadcasting. And third, if a station breaks the rules, they have the power to punish them.
And just take a look at the price tag on those licenses. If you want to start a private radio station in a city like Lagos, that'll be 20 million naira. Now that's not just a fee, that's a huge financial wall. It immediately makes you ask, who can actually afford to get a voice on Nigeria's airwaves? That cost alone is a massive form of power.
And when stations do get on the wrong side of the rules, the penalties can be really severe. For example, during the #EndSARS protest back in 2020, 3 big TV stations got hit with a combined fine of 9 million naira for what the NBC called unprofessional coverage. So these aren't just little slaps on the wrist. These sanctions have real financial teeth.
For films, the process is also very structured, but pretty straightforward. A filmmaker submits their movie, the NFVCB reviews it, and then they give it one of those ratings we all know, like G for everyone or 18 for adults only. A movie can't be shown legally in a Nigerian cinema until it gets that official certificate.
Now, as you can probably guess, when you have this much power, you're going to have some controversy. And that brings us to the really messy part of this whole conversation. The accusations of political bias, the outside pressures, and all the problems these regulators are up against. This quote right here from the Media Rights Agenda really gets to the heart of the biggest criticism. The argument is that the NBC isn't just a referee, it's the one who writes the rules, accuses you of breaking them, prosecutes the case, and acts as the judge.
Critics say that whole setup is fundamentally unfair, especially when stations don't even get a real chance to defend themselves.
And this really sums up the central conflict perfectly. On the one hand, the official goal is to be an impartial umpire, making sure everyone plays fair. But on the other hand, you have this constant accusation that these regulators are really just political tools, used to punish any media outlets that are too critical of the government.
And man, these regulators are dealing with a minefield of problems. There's constant political pressure that makes it hard to stay independent. They're also trying to use old rules to police this wild new digital world of blogs and social media. They've even had their powers challenged in court, like a ruling that said the NBC couldn't even impose fines anymore. And they're often trying to do all this without nearly enough money or staff.
So, where does all this leave us? With all these issues, what does the future even look like for media regulation? Because despite all the problems, these organizations are still incredibly important. The real question is, how on earth can they adapt to a media world that's changing faster than ever?
In the end, it all comes back to finding that balance. For all their flaws, you can't just get rid of these bodies. They play a vital role in maintaining professional standards and protecting the public. Without some kind of referee, the whole media landscape could just turn into chaos, and nobody would trust anything they see or hear.
And that leaves us with one last massive question to think about. The old system was built for a world of radio towers and printing presses. But today, anyone with a phone can be a broadcaster to the entire world. In this new age of endless, borderless online content, who is the regulator? And maybe more importantly, who should be? That's the challenge that's going to define the future of media, not just in Nigeria, but everywhere.